Let's do this. Hi, my name's Maria, and I am a product management consultant. And today I am again with a Tallinn product group, bringing you content about how product management is done in Tallinn. Today is going to be a little bit different of a topic, and I'm going to be interviewing Rainer Loopere. Rainer is an analyst turned product manager who has worked at Wise, Katana, and today he is the Chief Product Officer at Escrit. Rainer, want to share with the audience a little bit about yourself?
Yes, hello. I'll walk you through my background and different roles and what I've been doing, because I think we'll be referring back to them a little bit as well, so it's good to have the context. But yeah, well, ever since I was a kid, I dreamed of solving customer problems in a way that helps the business as always. But no, actually, I have a finance background. I did a bachelor's initially in economics. Already during my studies, I started working at Wise, and I think I was there for 5 years, roughly, different roles. So finance in the beginning, then analytics, but it was more on the, like, not product analytics, but reporting, regulatory and financial reporting, but still working closely with data. And eventually I got into what you nowadays call internal product management. Back then, we didn't call it like that, so I didn't even know that it was product management. I just started working with engineers, maintaining their backlog and planning their work, but it all happened somehow naturally. After Wise, I took a break, did my master's degree in, it was half technical, half product management actually, or business oriented. So, by the way, as a final project in that school as well, we did not like a paper or anything, but an actual startup. Mm-hmm. So we both kind of like did the marketing, branding, and pitch deck, okay, but also coded the prototype as well. So it was a little bit of both. But I went there to get technical skills.
Did you actually put something in the market then? As part of it?
Not on the market, but we had a prototype that you could use and click around, and we could demo it at least. Yeah. Actually, we demoed and tested it, but never went to the market. It was more on the business side there, where we saw that it didn't make sense. But halfway, it was still a school project, so when we realized it halfway through, but we still had to, it was too late to pivot in that sense if it was a school project, so. Yeah. So there was that. This is when I understood what product management is, started learning, understanding it more, reading about it more, and I got to the understanding that this is what I want to do next. Went to Qatar then, started as an API product manager. So this was my first role where I started building for end customers or actual customers, but it was still a technical product. So my personas were developers. Worked that well for me because I had more technical and internal product management background, so I could utilize both of my experiences and try out something new for me as well. And in Katana, I think it was around 3 years, I think, when I was there. Product manager, then product lead, and eventually go head of product as well. So in the end, for some time, I led all of product teams in there, which was 9-ish. So I was leading under product managers there as well. And now, at Escrit, CPO, but we're early stage startup company, so maybe a year old by now. We have a product on the market since beginning of the year, steadily growing, but still we're a small team. So it's CPO and product manager and analyst and designer all at the same role.
Okay, so all those previous experiences serve you and prepared you to be with Escrit today. Great, thank you, Rainer. So we're going to be touching on a couple of topics that you're interested in. I personally also enjoy these two topics, and although they're seemingly unrelated to work, I think that all of us can benefit from them. One of the topics we're going to be covering is going to be on the open feedback culture of companies. And that's a very obvious one on how it relates to work, right? But the second one, which is on mental health, well, my argument would be is that we are knowledge workers. So we all bring our minds to work. And it probably is a good idea to, work on your mental health to be able to break yourself and your colleagues in a better situation to work. So we're going to be exploring these topics, based on our initial conversation. And I wanted to start with open feedback culture. I love definitions because we get usually stuck talking about topics in a way that we start taking things for granted. So I like to take a step back to see how we see them before we dive into more practical examples and experiences. So how would you describe open feedback culture if you, for example, were explaining it to a high schooler that is about to, go into work for the first time?
One aspect is, one part of the culture is people having the skills and knowledge how to receive and give feedback. Second part is they understand the importance of it as well. And third part, I guess, is how widespread and used it actually is. You might know the theory, but real life is different. So all these different parts, people are trained, they know what it is, and it's actually used as well. An indicator could be is like, do people tell the other coworker that they have directly what things they like, what they don't like? Are they giving tips to improve to that person if something is going maybe not in an ideal world? Or even good positive feedback as well. Like, are you telling that person that everything's fine and you're doing a good job? So I guess like my one sign is there is like, does this happen at all? And does it happen directly to that person? Like quite often you see this happening through managers or some third parties or something like that. But is it direct, frequent, and is it happening? I guess that's what describes good culture.
Mm-hmm. So open is then, if I understood what you just shared, is the fact that it's spread around and that is directly happening between the colleagues and not necessarily through the third party. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Are there any examples of good or healthy open feedback culture you've experienced?
Well, Wise was like that. And like I mentioned, it was my first role, first real job, so to say, my first career experience. That all, and it was never like it wasn't a topic for me back then. I mean, there was training, there was a lot of emphasis there, but I grew up as everything being normal. That you talk about it, that it happens. Everything was not normal back there, so it wasn't like a conscious thing, but it was very good looking back. And feeling some different ways of doing it or it not happening, then you started kind of like, like you said in the beginning, I took it for granted, then went to somewhere else, so they were like, ooh, not everything is like that.
Yeah.
So I had that experience.
Yeah. Okay. So you only realized that it's not a common thing when you went outside of White House. Okay. Now, you said that one of the things that makes an open feedback culture is people having the skill to receive it and give it. Now, gaining a skill is not something that happens from one day to the next. So, how do you contribute to bringing in that culture in a place where people don't have it, right?
Yeah, I dabbled in it a little bit in Katana. This is where people had it was normal. People with different backgrounds, some people coming from corporate roles where maybe it hasn't been that much of an attention. Some are just junior. So we have all those different backgrounds of people. They come in together and it wasn't working that greatly. So I put some effort into well, at least around me to improve it as well. But what I learned over the years afterwards as well is like nobody's ever good at it from the beginning. You might have some traits that make it easier to maybe receive, but then it's also about implementing and following up as well. Let's break it down into steps. There's running some process, there's some structure, you receive feedback, You need to be able to listen to it. You need to be able to get the insights out of it. Thirdly, you need to decide what you're gonna do and not do, and communicate it as well. And then stick to it to do something about it and improve as well. And all those different parts, some different people might be good at different parts naturally. Somebody might be better at listening, somebody might be better at, I don't know, being self-aware and iterating and improving themselves. But I've never seen anybody good at all those things at once. Okay. It's always a skill to be trained.
Okay. What was the first one?
Listening, then I guess, digesting it or getting the insights out of it, or like you might listen to it, but you need to understand it and get some, I don't know, find some patterns maybe, or decide if it's a one-off feedback or something recurring, or like you don't even have to agree with all the feedback. There are sometimes reasons for doing something the way you're doing, and you just need to explain back to that person. And third part is, if you decide that what you're gonna do, what are the common patterns or problem areas that you might want to improve or work on, then doing something about it.
Mm-hmm. Now, all these things that you described sound to me like they are the role of the receiver of feedback, right? You have to listen to what people are telling you. You have to break it down into something that you can make sense of. You need to decide what you're going to do about it. But what might be then the skills that you have observed people have when they're like good at giving?
Oh yeah, that's a completely different point of view as well. As a giver, you need to understand context. You need to understand that there's time and place for that. You need to be able to do it. Sometimes giving feedback might be uncomfortable as well. If it's a problematic topic, or especially if it's, I don't know, even something very, very personal, or something along those lines. And then doing it in a way that's insightful and actionable. There are several parts of giving good feedback as well, like giving examples, giving context, when does it happen, why, and so on. And then maybe even like actionable proposals as well. What do you think could be done differently? I mean, if you just say that you're doing it wrong, cool, what are you going to do with that information?
I'd like to explore a situation, right? I'm imagining an actual situation I had at work where I would have liked to give feedback, but I never did because I didn't feel this person was interested or in a position to receive it. And this was a person in a highly powerful position, so someone hierarchically higher than me and pretty much higher than anyone around us in the room. And I found that this person's way of communicating was extremely aggressive. There was always a lot of, he wasn't aggressive at people, but in his language around the business, he was aggressive. And it was very interesting to see the dynamic of how whenever we had a meeting, without that person in the room, everybody in the room participated. Whenever that person joined that meeting, which was a recurring one, it was a completely different dynamic. That person dominated the room, and there was like all that bellic language, I guess, right? So if you're in my position and you want to transmit this to this person who is of authority, whom you're not having like private space to talk to, how would you, what first steps would you take to try and give feedback to someone like this?
Well, I think, at first it starts from reading the room and context and the culture of the company as well. In some cultures, it might not be appropriate at all, period. Going somewhere who is not your direct manager, or like somebody that like several layers maybe up above you, and it's not normal at all, then, I mean, you might want to go another round. But assuming that it is encouraged or should be normal, at least in theory, in the company, but then it's another question of, how do you handle this one particular person? And you said as well that you don't have direct private one-on-ones or contacts.
Nope.
Yeah, okay. In that case, I would try to still, reach out privately, not publicly, with something along those lines of like, hey, there are some things that I noticed that impact the work, or if you can bring in some specific meeting or context as well. So like, hey, I saw some things at that meeting that maybe didn't go as you might have planned, and I have some tips for you or a proposal for you how to improve in the future. Or like I'm not exactly on the go able to phrase it myself like that. You would need to think it through. But the message, like purpose of that message, needs to be that you want to help, not criticize, but you want to help. And I not even passive aggressively want to help, but genuinely, that person needs to genuinely feel that you care about them and you want to help them.
Okay. I think I would have failed out of the bat because I didn't really feel there was that trust. I didn't feel there was an interest. And because I didn't feel there was an interest, I also didn't have an interest. But sometimes I did wonder what would happen if this person could see through a peephole the way the meeting dynamic happens when they're there and when they're not. But I think it goes back to what you said before. The context is very important when we're going to give feedback. We need to read the culture of the company. So I wonder, when you come in with the idea that, hey, open feedback culture is not actually something that happens everywhere, but it's useful, maybe what are some signs that you have to see to feel comfortable with trying it out, right? Because it seems like it's not going to be welcome in all places. It's not going to be smart to try in all places, right? So what are some of the things in a place where it is not being applied that encourage you to like, okay, it's worth giving it a shot?
One thing, in addition to the previous example as well, is like politely ask them, do they want given feedback? Are they interested? Like give them the opportunity to decide, or you don't even need to say that it's a feedback or like I want you to do something different, or like just tell that I have an observation. Do you want to hear it?
Yeah.
Very
knock the door first, basically.
Yeah, knock the door first and see if they're even willing to listen or not. I mean, yes, you can try it like that politely. In the beginning, if you're doing it first times or it's not a common norm, you might want to explain a little bit further your motivation and context and like you want to help and you want to improve and you're doing this with a goodwill.
Yeah.
And so on, because you never know how that person is reacting.
Yeah.
So put a little bit more effort into setting the tone than giving it. But I mean, if you're over time and it's not you've been in the company for a few times, then it's a matter of trying a couple of times and then you can see and feel on your own, like, is it well received or not? Or like, can you, how often or frequently can you do it? And sometimes it's a personal thing as well. To some people you can do it and to some it's not really possible.
Okay. Then let's look at it from another perspective, right? So far we've discussed this as assuming that having an open feedback culture can be a good thing. So what are the costs of not implementing an open feedback culture? It could be both from a professional perspective, right? People in the company doing the job, what are they missing when they're not implementing an open feedback culture? Or if you prefer, you can also think about it from a personal perspective. What do you miss out when you're not participating in giving or receiving feedback openly about your job?
Maybe two bigger things. One is personal growth aspect, or like if you can go to like why is feedback important, or what you might be missing out. One is personal growth, and secondly is like feedback loops and people communicating. Efficiency and productivity, I guess, is the bigger term there. Like team dynamics and efficiency. Like you can. I think it might be like maybe more relatable example to product people is, well, retros themselves as well is a form of feedback within your engineering team usually. But if you apply the same mentality and logic like elsewhere and in your other relations and personal perspective, it's also like in a way a retro of your own work or yourself, like personal retro, like what's going well, what's going bad, what can you improve. If you don't do it, I mean, you don't know. That's one thing. Like you're in the blind. You don't have data, what you're doing well and what not. There are probably things, like in my own experience, there are things that I have been worried about, self-conscious about, trying to work on them, and then I go around, do a feedback round and I learn that nobody notices. Nobody cares. I've had a few examples like that, or another example is like there are things that you're blind of, that you don't do. Some are bigger, some are smaller. Like it could be a thing like how do you how well do you present, or do you have some tics that you do when presenting or discussing at meetings that body language. I've had those as well. There have been like feedback given to me, for example, where I don't remember what was it exactly, but I had some certain tics that, in my body language made me feel that I'm not very confident, and kind of like if I'm not very confident, then people perceive that I don't know that well what I'm talking about. So in product life, real use cases, you're presenting some idea, design, approach, scope, whatever, and you need to get the buy-in of other people. And if you're not presenting confidently, then people are like, "Oh, are you sure that you believe it yourself?" So simple things like quick and critical things, but there's also like long-term growth perspectives as well. Like should you focus more on strategic side, execution side, stuff like that as well, where in order to improve yourself, you need to know what to improve. That's easy.
But you talked, for example, about in one situation, this being the body language, and this got me thinking about, what could be a dangerous line to cross when you think you're trying to implement an open feedback culture, but you are stepping into cultural differences, for example?
It's a good question. I've been lucky that even though there are some places where the culture is better or worse, at least all acknowledge that it's important and they want to improve. At least the willingness is there. So I've never seen an environment.
I don't mean golfing culture. I actually mean world cultures. Like, me coming into the room and somebody saying like, "Oh, you're a Latina, so you probably know how to dance," right?
Yeah.
So, what things do we have to take into account when we are going into, I'm going to try and give this person feedback, but stay also conscious or aware that I actually might be stepping into a delicate cultural topic. Like you move too much when you speak. It is a cultural thing.
Well, if you bring that angle in, then yes, so things might get quite complex. Cultural differences definitely matter. In ways, I felt it quite clearly as well, where, in the beginning, company was more, how do you say, local. You maybe had Tallinn office and something else, and then you grew, and suddenly like everybody that you work with are international, different cultures, then yes, you need to be mindful about those things. About what specifically depends. As always, like when communicating with some different cultures. For example, I had some leads who are one or several layers above me who are British. Their feedback is very around the edge. In my case, it was the case of them trying to give feedback to me, and I didn't understand it.
Okay.
It was like, it was the CFO who was several layers before, on top of me. I remember one specific point of feedback. It was something along the lines of me not run, or I was this internal project management by that time, and I don't remember for sure, but I think it was something about strategy and future, he didn't understand the direction that I'm going, or something along those lines. What's my future vision and plan and strategy that I'm working with. And he phrased it in a way of he came to me and was like, "Hey, I'm gonna put my Estonian hat on. I'm gonna try to be as direct as possible. I'm trying," and he deliberately did so. But still, culturally, it was it would be better if you would consider this, that you did this. So it was very indirect, and I was like, I listened to it. I was like, yeah, cool. I could think about it. Okay, then I didn't even understand that it's a very serious feedback meeting, or there's some how critical it is. And it was months later, then I realized that, oh damn, he was pissed off.
Okay.
He was like this.
He was pissed off and a British.
Yeah.
Politely pissed off.
Yeah. He was bothered. I understood later that the fact that he came and organized this meeting with me and sat me down and wanted to discuss with me, it meant that it was something was wrong for him.
Okay.
That he needed to intervene, but I didn't understand the seriousness of it back then.
which means then that feedback then is not only what we're saying or not saying, but all the other elements. The fact that he took the time to book a meeting with you, right? If he was a few levels above, the fact that he said, I'm going to try to, meaning he is making a notable effort to get out of his own way to try and get the message, but the message didn't reach, right? Yeah. So maybe this is when the good old advice of playing it back helps.
Yeah.
Do you understand what I mean? Do you understand this is serious, right? I'm starting to think of the implications that having a mindset of giving and receiving feedback openly also impacts how you make the tough decisions that managers need to make on, how you close an interview and indicate to someone that they might have actually gotten the job or not. Some people send signals mistakenly during an interview when the answer is not yet set, but they send a signal to candidates that leave candidates thinking, oh, I got the job. Maybe they didn't, just because they were extremely nice, for example. Or maybe when you're firing someone or warning them that their performance is not great. Like, how do you directly but respectfully send the message of your performance is not where we expected, and this could be the consequence? Everybody's afraid of doing that, or most people in that position, especially first-time managers, are afraid of doing that. If you go back to your roles as a manager or as a leader, do you see how having this mindset of giving and receiving feedback openly helps you manage your teams? Or did you find yourself anyway struggling with especially giving feedback to a team member that is not performing well? Do you recall any situation like this?
Thinking where to start. Yeah. I mean, definitely it impacts. And definitely I utilize it a lot. Couple of practical things that I did when I was running the team of product managers. Well, I, for one, still want feedback as well. And this, well, not only with your, you don't even have to lead those people, but I did it as a product manager around me, with the teams and stakeholders around me as well. It's first step is you can, just by asking yourself continuously, constantly, all the time doing it, most people actually start asking in return as well. I had weekly one-on-ones, and every once a month I made sure that there's a time and place for us to talk feedback and ask. And it's usually if you constantly ask, do you have this week, or do you have this month, do you have this month, and then they start asking in return. So you get this going as well. I guess it's a matter of just iterating, practicing over time. You might want to, just asking for it in the beginning, then it might turn into you agree that every X meeting is a feedback meeting, let's dedicate time on it and make it a regular thing. And over time, it gets to the point where you can, you discuss some feedback, even if it's monthly or quarterly or whatever, something, and it's quite naturally, quite often you come to this point during the discussion that, hey, why did we wait a month to discuss this point? We could have discussed it right the next day after something happened. So it's usually encouraging them then to, on both sides actually, both receiving and giving feedback, to speak out right away, just to avoid misunderstandings, miscommunications. So many things, especially product managers, is you might do something intentionally even, but that other person doesn't understand your intentions. And they think they make their own conclusions. They assume something, and if nothing is spoken out, they don't discuss about it, it starts brewing. So this is something that I always encouraged, and still do as well with anybody that I work with. Hey, if something is bothering you, let's talk about it right away. Plus, it's way easier to interact with it as well. I don't know, if there was a bad meeting, I have feedback directed to me, and I get this right after the meeting. I know the context, I know what we're talking about, I remember the meeting. If it's a month later or a quarter later and you come to talk to me about some meetings, then I'm like, maybe, I don't remember.
Yeah. There's something I want to highlight from what you just shared, which is some people criticize feedback culture because they think it's a waste of time, and it's so much effort into filling in surveys and having these meetings and whatnot. But then feedback doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to wait for that monthly meeting to happen. It can be on the spot. One of the most useful tips I got from a book, by the way, as a manager, first-time manager back in the day, was from this book, Radical Candor. I don't know if you've read it, yeah? From Kim Scott. And I think that was the first time I read it, which was if you have feedback for someone, for example, they just finished a presentation and they're in your team, after they finished the presentation, whether you loved the presentation or whether you thought they were emphasizing something that wasn't understood, and that's feedback that you can give them in like a 2-minute conversation in the hall as you're walking to the next meeting, do it right away. And this adds up over time. So you're always leaving the expectations very clear. So it doesn't have to be an elaborate, loaded, slow process, right?
Mm-hmm. Or even if taking the same presentation example, like right at the same time, pre-write the message already in Slack or something. If it's like if it doesn't require some deeper analysis or explanation, I was like, if you liked something, like feedback can be positive. We often talk about feedback as like criticism and negative things, but like we need positive feedback as well. So just telling, hey, that went well, just a thumbs up. You can leave that as a one-liner. It's like, boom, like not too complex.
And we don't know what's happening in people's personal lives. So we take for granted the good things, but if we actually say them like clearly and out loud, I love the work that you do. I loved how you presented that. I loved how you answered that question. We might actually be shining a light on someone's day that maybe are having a rough time. Which brings me to our next topic, right? And that's going to be mental health. So there are some ways in which I've noticed Rainer talks about both of these topics, in which a wonderful skill he seems to have is observation. He seems to be looking at the world around him, and based on that, figuring out, should I give feedback or should I not? Should I ask for feedback or should I not? And I'd like you to share with the audience what you shared with me when we first met to talk about this, on how did you first notice around your colleagues the topic of, mental health? There were some things you were noticing in your colleagues, and what this trigger you to do or not do?
Well, my mental health topic, or why I'm talking about it, is like, well, I've been through some struggles myself. A few years ago, I was also, I had depression and anxiety, serious sleep issues as well. I was at the point where, depression-wise, I stopped feeling things. So it's like, you have things that you like, your hobbies and things that like give you energy. Like in my case, it's eating, cooking, working out, being active, spending time with friends. And then I realized that at some point I did those things and I felt absolutely nothing. That was like a big red flag for me. And well, the root cause wasn't like work related and product management related. It was my personal life, but still, like I went through some things, had some issues, tried to be working at the same time. And when I was dealing with my own issues and trying to get out of them, I slowly here and there at some point, like it took quite a while for me to open up about this, but at some point I started opening up to my other coworkers as well, here and there, with whom I had closer contacts, sharing that I'm having some issues and I'm working with them. And the more open I was, the more I realized how widespread it is. Like I might have shared some things in some conversations that I'm seeing a therapist on a weekly basis. I'm working through these things. I have pretty much diagnosed some things, and then that person just realized, I'm like casually taking antidepressants as well, and like. I was so surprised how widespread it was. Or another example was that one coworker recommended me some workbooks, like kind of like notebooks or of exercises that you can do for yourself to deal with those things. And I ordered them, and I had them on my work table for a few days or a week or something like that. And then as well, like several people came to me like, "Hey, what is that? Like, I think I need this one as well. Do you find it useful?" And so on, so on. So like quite common issue, and yeah, not many people even know what to do about it. What is it? How to recognize it? What to do about those things? And I mean, how does it relate to work? It's like, well, it impacts our productivity long term. Not, no, I mean, productivity is very, yeah, how to say that? Capitalistic way of thinking, but still, like, we want to be happy. We want to be around for a long time and long term, and not, well, yeah, not to run ourselves dry. So that's why these things are important.
Yeah, so we want to be at work, we want to be creative, we want to be productive, we want to be engaged, we want to be present into what we're doing, and if we're struggling mentally, because it was an interesting point for me when you mentioned that, I had some struggles that were personal. They were not related, but can you really draw that solid of a line, right? Because you bring yourself to work. So even if the costs of these things were not coming from work, in a way they would impact how you bring yourself to work, right?
No, definitely, yeah.
Yeah. If you can share a little bit of that journey of, you said you were not feeling anything. It's hard to understand what that means, right? Because we are experiencing sensations and emotions all the time, even if we don't know how to put a name on it. And I guess that's why that has become also such a spread out topic, which is emotional intelligence or agility, understanding what's happening with us. So you said that it was a big red flag. How would you describe that, right? Maybe someone has gone through that and they didn't know what was happening to them. So what do you mean by saying, okay, I'm doing this thing with friends and I feel nothing, right? Like, how does that feel? And I know it sounds like, how does it feel to not feel? What is the signals that...
Yeah. A couple of examples then maybe. I'll start with, I'll get to the feeling part as well, but some more obvious symptoms is those things always come together with sleeping issues as well. That's a way easier trigger and thing to notice, first of all. Every now and then, of course, we all have trouble sleeping, but if it becomes a constant thing that you have, well, there are different ways, like indications of sleeping problems, whether you don't fall asleep, or you wake up too early, or you wake up many times during the night, whatever it is. But if it's constant all the time, and to the point that you feel that it's continuously impacting your life as well, that you can't really recover it as well. That's one of the things that was like indicator for me, and it went worse. Secondly, well, it's a mixture of like depression, anxiety, and insomnia. So like it's those things are always in some combination, like might be more on the anxiety side than some symptoms of depression, or other way around. But so I'm touching a little bit of everything, but so there's sleep. Anxiety wise, in my case, it was friends. Like I'm an introverted person by nature, but like I have a close group of friends, and I always loved spending time with them. Whenever, like when I was like in this lowest period, in that sense, it was like I started dreading meetings with my friends. I didn't feel excited about them. I was like, okay, I have this event or birthday party. It's like, okay, Rainer, you can do it. Like I had to encourage myself to do it. Later, like afterwards, I still felt better, usually. So it's kind of like maybe more relatable thing is like with workouts as well, or activity or going for a walk or whatever, you know that you will feel better after it, but it's still, you need to push yourself to do it because it's hard. And I had the same thing even with like meeting my friends. I didn't want to do it. Or even when I was at some event, I was very like antsy and anxious, like couldn't sit normally. I was like feeling just uncomfortable in my own skin around people, and I just wanted to be by myself.
So what I'm reading here that actually you were feeling things. You were just feeling very different things to what you were used to. Rather than being excited about meeting your friends, you were tense about it. You had to force yourself. Maybe there was an excitement about those things that would normally excite you. Maybe the numbness in the body from not sleeping well is also something that we associate with not feeling anything. I personally, when I feel very tired and struggle with sleep because I'm worried about things, I literally feel pain in my body in a way that feels like I don't want to move my body. I don't want to interact. And maybe there is a feeling, but it feels like not feeling because it's not the things what we're used to feel.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, yeah, anxiety was definitely like being anxious. It was definitely something that I was feeling for sure. But at the same time, well, yeah, you're more numb to things. Like I stopped caring for problematic or like even for the things that would trigger you maybe or annoy you or like the how to say on the negative sides. Yeah, stopped caring. Like stopped caring about any of those things. But back then I didn't realize it that it's a problem per se. It's like, I mean, if you have things that annoy you and trigger you and you can handle them without taking them into your heart, in some way it's a good thing. But then like in my case it was the positive things that I started lacking, and like I always all the time felt tired, annoyed, not very positive thoughts and emotions and stuff like that. So yeah.
Okay. One word that I noticed that you used when you were describing the things that you saw changing that were kind of red flags is you used the word indicator. So you're treating yourself as a product. You're the product. You're a key performance indicator. So if you're a product manager and you're worried about your job and you're worried about measuring the performance in your product, then you can apply the same thing to yourself, which is something that you apparently do very well. You have your key performance indicator of you as, your mental and physical health. So sleep is one of those. Exercise is another one of those. For relationships, meeting with friends,
Yeah.
right? If something is not going wrong in several of those, reach out for help. Even if you think that asking for help is weird, like, oh, I'm fine. What is this whole therapy thing? Just look at how those things in your life are doing and look for help. Better to be sorry than, no, it's the opposite.
Safe.
Better to be safe than sorry. Yeah.
Well, on that point, I would even add, like, if we bring in like asking help or therapy in general, like, I have this opinion that like you don't need to wait until things are bad. Ask for help. Like, again, giving some context, like, I've been okay with like therapists, going to therapy, psychologists since very early on. I remember we had some pilot projects in WISE as well that we were testing. It wasn't a continuous thing, but there was this program as well where people had the opportunity to go and talk to a therapist without, how to say, it was like explicitly said that you don't need to have issues. Like just talk to that therapist as a friend. I think it was like võõras sõber, like a stranger friend, that how they labeled this project as well. I don't know if it still exists or not, but that's how they communicated it as well. It's like you go to talk to somebody who's a trained therapist, but you go to talk to them about your daily good things, bad things, like you would with a friend. But on the background, yes, then that person can guide you, help you, or analyze you. I went through a few of those. Here and there I used therapist in some certain tricky situations as well, on and off. Well, and yeah, my point was that like you don't need to wait until something is bad. You can go for like a regular health check every now and then. In any case, just like you would do some screenings or go visiting your GP every now and then, just to see how things are. You can do it at all times. I remember back in WISE, I with those same pilot projects, like I saw so many people around me burning out. I was afraid myself as well, working a lot. I was stressed. I was like, damn, I'm Am I not seeing something? Should I be concerned? And that I went even with that problem statement to a therapist. I was like, help me understand. Should I be worried or not?
Such a product manager. He brought a product statement to the therapist. Okay. So that's again what I mean by feeling like your skills of observation, you seem to bring them to whatever you're doing. So you were not sure if you were burning out, but you saw colleagues around you burning out. You knew you were working a lot, you had a lot to do, and you were wondering, am I burning out too? So that curiosity and observation seems to be very powerful in helping you. I think we talk about bringing that thinking to product, but we should also then bring it to how we relate to others at work and to how we care for ourselves, and then do went and check. And of course, it's great if not everything, if everything's good, but you might also catch something before it becomes more problematic. Which reminds me of an episode that I heard one in Lenny's podcast, where the person being interviewed was actually talking about how he turned into the topic of neuroscience and self-care because of a very tragic situation with his fiancée. And there he talked about the concept of interoception and exteroception, which is how well we are in touch with our internal signals, interoception, and the opposite is external signals. Apparently, it seems very common for entrepreneurs to be highly exteroceptive, if that's the word, right? They're very in touch with what's going on around them. You know, the market, the investments, the things that need to get done. And there's so much into that. But then they have very low or no interoception, which is they're not in touch with their internal needs. You know, am I feeling well? Have I slept enough? Am I thirsty? Like, I am very shocked by people that work and they're like, oh, I forgot to eat. I would never forget to. Like, never, never. I'm hungry. I need to stop now. But that seems to be a thing that we can train. Like our ability to be in touch with what's happening with us internally. What are some of the things that you do after you have experienced these challenges to, you know, keep your health in check?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, by the way, I never realized it that I'm approaching myself as a product and so you pointed it out. So it's a great observation actually. But yes, you're right. I as soon as you mentioned it to me, I was like, well, yeah, could make sense. But yeah, the indicators are metrics to the KPIs to that.
So what are your personal KPIs?
As I mentioned, yeah. So nowadays I'm in this position that I'm out of the main issues. I have my toolkits. I have I end up with stressful situations. I sometimes work too hard. Like life goes on. I still have my own struggles, but it's a matter of how much to apply some things that you have in your toolkit and when to apply them and so on. So what I keep track of, sleep for sure, definitely. Like I said, every now and then some occasional troubles or sleepless nights are fine. I get them today as well. Sometimes there's just in my case, I have too many thoughts going on in my head, so I can't fall asleep for hours. It still happens, but it's not a problem per se until it's maybe happening a couple nights in a row, or I keep an eye on that one. As soon as I notice something going on, I intervene. I have my toolkit of during my trial and error back at that time, I tested around what things worked for me. Turns out it's the same common things that they all recommend too with sleep, like avoid screens and phones and TV a couple hours before night, physical activity every day. Even walks are fine as well. That doesn't have to be a workout per se, but stuff like that. Having routines before bed, something that you do, same things that you do every night before the bed. Not spending too much time, just in bed, laying around. So if you can't fall asleep, go to the other room, do something else, come back in 15 minutes, try again. So I'm not super. So I have these things that I do, but I'm not definitely not utilizing them on a daily basis. I still scroll Instagram before bed. But as soon as I notice that I have issues, I stop it. I know that I notice 1 or 2 nights that I can't trouble asleep. This is when I consciously turn on this mitigation toolkit.
Okay.
And for a few days or something like that, I start applying these things and being more conscious about it until it's back to normal.
It's like your risk management system, mitigation. Okay.
But yeah, sleep is one thing. Same thing is with activity that I mentioned. When I know that I have more stressful times at work, this is where I absolutely prioritize workouts more as well. Regular workouts and making sure that I don't miss one. Because again, I tried from my own experience how it starts impacting me. It might be very tempting to think that if you have too much to do, you don't have time for a workout, but I can again confirm from my own experience is like taking this 1 hour or something, doing something else, exercising, and even, I don't know, even if you have to work all night or something like that, taking that break, coming back, you will still be more productive for the rest of those hours that you need to work compared to not work, like not taking this break at all. So, and like you think that you don't have time, but actually you always do. You will be more productive if you take those breaks and work out and keep yourself fresh.
Mm-hmm. And I would like to bring us a little bit to a couple of example situations that could be helpful for people who have roles similar to you, have had to manage people or like lead a whole product. What could you do as a manager to help a team member that seems to be stressed out, maybe overworking? If you start seeing some signals and maybe they are not the kind that are open to feedback, what can you do to help them out before it becomes a problem?
You definitely cannot force help, even if it's well intended. You can't tell that person what to do. You can't force help on them, even if you know for sure that person needs to take that into account, and they might be on the verge of burning out or some serious issues. You can't force it upon them. Something that I felt myself as well is like, if somebody would have been more forceful and noticing it, I would have closed down more back then. But I guess what helped, I have a friend who's a psychologist as well, and again, back at that time, I didn't notice it that well, but analyzing it later, I realized what she was doing. She was constantly here and there just bringing out that she's here for me if I want to talk. That's all. It couldn't be in some small things like, hey, I noticed that you're a hard time. If you ever want to talk about it, I'm here.
Leave the door open.
Yeah. Or depending on your closeness with that person, you might go a little bit more deeper. It's like you can even point out that I'm saying some symptoms that I had myself in the past and that are indicated to some burnout or something like that, or stress, too much stress or something like that. If you can bring in your own personal experience in that sense and just point out it's something that I've dealt with myself. If you want to chat and ask about my experience, and then I'm here. Or just asking if they want to talk about it, or if you've seen it aside from some other people. It's it's okay to share concern. It's okay to offer help, but the key thing is offer, not force.
Offer, not force. Good. And what tips, if any, would you give to companies that are doing nothing on the area of open feedback culture, or nothing on the topic of creating actively an environment where people don't overworked? What are some small things that you think companies or even teams, right? Maybe not at the whole company level, but maybe at your team level, that you could do to start promoting a little bit more space for taking care of yourself?
Well, feedback is easy. You can start doing it with people around you at all time. You don't need to wait for trainings or company culture or something like that. If it's close people that you work with, you can approach them at any time. Hey, we work together. I want feedback from you. Like I said before, you can start asking, and then over time, people usually get naturally curious about themselves as well and about your collaboration and so on. Or you can, you usually have conversations about collaboration and processes and stuff like that in any way. And then you might want to just flip that conversation sometimes of like, hey, but how about you and me, like on a personal level? Like, is there something that I can do better? Yes, like you have feedback for a product or a team or a process, but what about me? You can just flip it around like that. You can create awareness as well by just talking about it, that it's important to you. At least you can't, if it's not something that's on a company level decided or communicated that it's important, you can't force it to be important for everyone else, but you can still say that I believe that this is critical for us to work together and work together well. You can still approach it from your angle and convince them and explain and educate people on that front.
And just one final question on those two. Do you think, without forcing it, there's any relationship between company cultures that have open feedback and the members' level of mental health?
Not sure actually. You can have both in like extreme cases. In both cases, as like I had ways with good feedback culture, people still burning out. I mean, burnout is more about and mental health issues. It's more about well, there are so many different aspects that result with people burning out as well. It can be internal drive and motivation. It can be external pressure and stress and stuff like that. You have different cultures. So not burning out is more about self-observation, being aware, protecting yourself. But that can happen with or without the feedback culture. I would say. I'm not sure if I would draw the line there.
Mm-hmm. It makes sense to me, though. They don't necessarily have to go hand in hand. It could be interesting to ask the question, from a research perspective.
But it definitely helps in that sense that if you have open feedback culture, then you can more openly talk about those things. It doesn't necessarily prevent them from happening.
But you just bring them more to the surface.
But you can. It's okay to surface those things, and that's already a great first step, I think. If there's an open feedback culture and you can go to that person with a concern, that's already a win in that sense.
All right, but let's start wrapping it up. Thank you so much, Rainer, for sharing these topics and your experience with us. Because we're recording this on a Friday, it doesn't matter where you're going to be hearing this in the future. Maybe, I don't know, a couple of recommendations for people who's entering into the weekend, right? Even if you have a lot to do, remember to schedule some time for yourself, for others. And if you're not sure whether you need help or not, be more like Rainer. Ask yourself, should I? Better to be safe than sorry. Anything else you'd like to share with the audience? Where can they find you? Whether to talk about mental health or or etiquette?
LinkedIn, easiest. Search by my name, reach out. I'm happy to talk about all those things. Go deeper as well about how did I fix something, or how did I find, or who to approach even, or where to ask out. Feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to help on that front.
Doors open. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.